5 claps. That's the entire crime scene. 5 claps, 1 whistle, and a press conference that has now put an entire professional sports league in a position they cannot talk their way out of. If someone told you a slow, sarcastic clap could turn into the most talked about sports story of the week, you'd probably laugh. But that is exactly what just happened, and once you see the full picture, the referee, the suspension math, the broadcast contracts worth billions, the silent coach, the teammates suddenly throwing hands to protect her, you will understand why this single moment might end up being remembered as the moment everything shifted for this league. Let's get into every single layer of it. Start with the rule that makes this whole thing matter in the first place. Across virtually every professional sport, there's an understanding that's older than most of the athletes currently playing. You can question a call. You can throw your arms up in disbelief. You can even get fined for muttering something under your breath at an official, and everyone treats it as background noise. That's normal. That's the theater of competition. But there's a line drawn in permanent marker that nobody touches, and that line is you do not say a referee's name out loud, in public, on camera. Referees exist behind a wall of anonymity for a reason. They are the crew, the officials, a faceless collective precisely so no single person becomes the target of a fanbase's anger. Caitlin Clark walked straight through that wall like it wasn't even there, and she didn't look sorry about it for a second. So what actually caused all this? Here's the part that makes the whole thing almost darkly funny once you break it down. During a game, Clark picked up a foul call she strongly disagreed with. She didn't scream. She didn't get in anyone's face. She didn't say a single word to the official. She just clapped her hands. 5 times, slow, obviously sarcastic, obviously frustrated, but completely silent and completely non-physical. That clap got her a technical foul, her 5th of the season. And if you've watched any of her rookie year, you know this is a player who has absorbed hard screens, hip checks, shoves, and every form of physical welcome to the league treatment that veterans love to hand out to a new star. She has taken all of that without much complaint. She's even publicly admitted when she deserved a technical in the past. But this particular call didn't sit right with her, and instead of shaking it off, she walked straight into the post-game press conference and decided the entire basketball world was going to hear every detail. What came out of her mouth next is why this thing exploded across social media within hours. She told the room she had gone directly up to the official after the final buzzer and asked point blank why she'd been given a technical. And according to Clark, the official told her flat out it was for clapping and, in her words, instigating. Then Clark said the name. Not once, multiple times, sitting right there at that podium, completely composed, almost amused. Gerda. Just like that. She handed the internet an actual name to search, an actual face to pull footage of, an actual individual official to hold accountable, instead of some anonymous, the officiating crew missed one. That is not something rookies typically have the nerve to do. That is not something most 10-year veterans do either. She knew precisely what she was doing when she said it. And she knew exactly what was riding on it too, because this isn't just an embarrassing moment for one official. This is a genuine countdown clock ticking in the background of her entire season. In this league, 7 technical fouls functions as the final warning track. 8 technicals triggers an automatic suspension. Clark is sitting right at the edge of that number, one more borderline whistle away from being forced to sit out a game entirely. So think about the position she's actually in here. A player one step away from a suspension, instead of playing it safe, instead of biting her tongue and letting this go quietly, leaned directly into the danger zone. She essentially told the room, "Go ahead, suspend me over a clap, and watch how thrilled your broadcast partners are when it happens on a night they've built an entire promotional campaign around." That is not the reaction of someone panicking about consequences. That's the reaction of someone who has already run the numbers and realized she's holding a stronger hand than the league wants to admit out loud. And that leverage is where this entire story stops being about one clap and becomes something much bigger, because underneath all of this is a financial trap the league built for itself, and Clark just lit the fuse on it in front of a national audience. Here's the trap laid out plainly. Right now, this league is finalizing enormous broadcast rights deals, numbers this organization has genuinely never seen in its history. Major networks, major streaming platforms, companies clearing space in their primetime lineups for games that used to be an afterthought on the sports calendar. And not one of those media companies is paying that kind of money for professional women's basketball as some abstract product. They are paying, in the most specific and literal sense, for Caitlin Clark. For the sold-out road arenas she fills single-handedly. For merchandise that vanishes off shelves within hours of being restocked. For rating spikes that made networks who had never once considered broadcasting this league suddenly clear their entire primetime schedule around one rookie. In blunt commercial terms, she is the actual product these networks paid a premium for. Now picture the exact scenario she laid out herself, on camera, without hesitation. A big primetime, nationally televised game gets scheduled months in advance. Weeks of promotional material rolls out across every platform. Advertisers buy premium commercial slots specifically because Caitlin Clark is going to be on their screen that night. And then, days before tip-off, a memo comes down from the league office saying the face of the entire broadcast is suspended because an official decided a 5-second sarcastic clap counted as instigating. That is not a minor scheduling inconvenience for a network executive who just spent enormous money securing that broadcast window. That is a full-blown public relations and financial disaster, and everybody in that room, including Clark, knows exactly how disastrous it would be. That's precisely why that press conference was so calculated. By openly naming the official, by laying out the technical foul math in plain terms for every camera in the room, by essentially inviting fans to mark their calendars for the game she might get suspended for, she flipped the entire script on the league. She is no longer the one being scrutinized here. The league's own officiating standards, its own decision-making, its own internal consistency, all of that is now the thing under a microscope, and she put it there on purpose. Think through the corner that puts the league office in. If they follow procedure and actually suspend her once she hits 8 technicals, they risk infuriating the broadcast partners who just signed those enormous rights deals. They risk alienating the massive new audience she personally brought into the building. And they risk proving her exact accusation right, that the league doesn't understand or want real competitive intensity from its biggest star. But if they quietly make the technical disappear, if they walk it back behind closed doors to avoid the suspension math ever matching, they're publicly admitting their own official got the call wrong. They're undermining the authority of every other referee working every other game in the league. And they're confirming to every other player watching that Caitlin Clark simply operates under a different rulebook than everybody else on the floor. There's no clean way out of that corner. She built it with a few sentences at a podium. And now the league has to figure out how to navigate it without losing credibility, no matter which direction they choose. There's a second thread quietly running underneath all of this, and it's been building for weeks before this press conference even happened, which makes the picture click into focus once you notice it. There's a basically universal understanding in coaching that when your franchise player is taking heat, whether that's physical treatment from opposing players or questionable calls from officials, the head coach steps up publicly and takes some of that pressure off. That's not just good manners. That's literally how trust gets built between a coach and a locker room over time. But in this very same press conference, when reporters raised the fact that Clark had just named an official on the record, the response from the coaching staff was noticeably guarded, noticeably reluctant to actually engage with the question. Set that next to Clark sitting right there, completely willing to risk her own name and her own season to say something out loud, and the contrast is impossible to miss for anyone watching that footage. Is that hesitation a deliberate strategy to avoid drawing more attention from the league office? Maybe. Is it a coaching staff still adjusting to a level of national scrutiny this particular team has genuinely never operated under before? Also entirely possible. Either way, it left Clark looking like she was fighting this specific battle mostly alone at that microphone, without much public backup from the bench. But here's the part of the story that actually works in the opposite direction, and it directly undercuts a narrative that's been circulating for weeks now. The story going around was that Clark was essentially isolated on the floor, a rookie left exposed to physical punishment while more experienced teammates stood back and let it happen without stepping in. That narrative has been quietly falling apart in real time, and this same game is proof of it. When things got physical during that exact matchup, when the opposing team tried to establish dominance through contact, it wasn't the front office or the coaching staff who stepped in first to address it. It was a veteran teammate who inserted herself directly into the middle of the situation, sending an unmistakable message to the rest of the league that the rookie is not standing out there by herself anymore. That is a real and meaningful shift happening inside that locker room, regardless of how cautious the coaching staff and front office continue to be in front of cameras. So where does all of this actually leave the league right now, today, in this exact moment? It leaves them sitting directly on top of one of the strangest paradoxes in modern sports business. They have, without any real argument to the contrary, the single most valuable, most talked about, most commercially important athlete this league has ever produced. And their own officiating structure is currently on a collision course with potentially suspending that exact player over what amounts to a sarcastic clap. That contradiction is exactly what's fueling the questions so many fans have been asking out loud for weeks now. What does this league actually want from her? Do they want a quiet, emotionless, camera-ready rookie who never shows a flicker of genuine competitive fire? Or do they want the fierce, chippy, fully invested competitor who happens to be the exact reason ratings have exploded this season? Because right now those two expectations are colliding head-on, in public, on national television, and Clark made absolutely certain that everybody is watching it happen in real time. The next stretch of this season is going to be genuinely worth watching closely. Every single time she steps onto the floor now, there's an added layer of tension wrapped around every single whistle that blows anywhere near her. Do officials tighten up even further just to make a point and prove they won't be pressured? Does the league quietly instruct crews to let more physical contact go uncalled just to avoid another headline exactly like this one? Or does this whole situation just sit there simmering under the surface until the technical foul math eventually forces an actual, unavoidable decision one way or the other? Nobody outside the league office actually knows the answer to that yet. But one thing about all of this is completely clear and beyond dispute. None of it was accidental. She said a referee's name on purpose. She laid out the exact financial stakes on purpose, in plain language, directly into every camera in that room. She dared the league to suspend her on national television, on purpose. She has completely and deliberately flipped who is actually on trial in this story, and at this point it clearly isn't her anymore. This entire situation is bigger than one clap. It's bigger than one technical foul, and it's bigger than one press conference. This is a 22-year-old rookie forcing an entire professional league to finally answer a question it has seemingly been avoiding for a very long time. What kind of basketball product do you actually want to sell to the world? And are you genuinely willing to risk your single biggest asset just to enforce a rule this small and this subjective? Right now, the ball is completely and entirely in the league's court, and everyone, from broadcast executives who just wrote enormous checks to fans arguing about it online right this minute, is watching closely to see exactly who blinks first.